My dear friends, my name is Dr. Jaton Kumar Rai Choudhury, and today's topic of discussion is recurrent pregnancy loss. I am highly indebted to the following textbooks, mostly Berek and Novak's Gynecology, others are Williams Gynecology, Clinical Gynecologic Endocrinology and Infertility, ACOG and RCOG journals. Preconceptional evaluation. History. Detailed history of previous all pregnancy losses including gestational age and any histology or karyotype assessment of previous abortus if done. Around 60% of pregnancies lost before 8 weeks of gestation are chromosomally abnormal, mostly trisomy, especially trisomy 16. And the most common single chromosomal abnormality is monosomy X, that means 45X, especially among the anembryonic conceptus. Aneuploid losses are frequent with recurrent pregnancy loss above 35 years. Usually, detection of aneuploidy in miscarriage specimen is less in recurrent pregnancy loss, and if detected, it does not affect the prognosis of future pregnancy. As spontaneous expulsion starts after 2 to 3 weeks of fetal demise, so accurate gestational age of pregnancy loss is difficult to determine. First trimester USG, if done, may help in determination of age of fetal loss. Most women with recurrent pregnancy loss experience miscarriage at approximately the same gestational age. Biochemical pregnancy loss, that means positive pregnancy test but loss before ultrasonography or histopathologic confirmation, are not included in the guideline, but it may be isolated or sometimes recurrent in some women. Subfertility is common in women with recurrent pregnancy loss, and the period of subfertility often is complicated with recurrent preclinical loss before the scheduled menstrual period. Menstrual history to exclude any oligoovulation and also relevant history of any endocrine abnormality including thyroid, prolactin, glucose intolerance and features of hyperandrogenism are to be noted. Personal or family history of thrombosis, detailed history of drug and environmental exposures, as well as all previous investigations and treatment. Physical examination. General physical examination to detect obesity, hirsutism, acanthosis, thyroid dysfunction, galactorrhea. Pelvic examination for size and shape of the uterus, mobility and adnexa, features of infection and estrogenization of the mucosal tissue. Laboratory investigation. Parental karyotyping, chromosome analysis of the product of conception, assessment of uterine cavity by hysterosalpingography, office hysteroscopy, 3D transvaginal sonography and sonohysterography. Serum TSH and prolactin, hemoglobin A1C, anti-cardiolipin antibodies, lupus anticoagulant and anti-beta-2 glycoprotein 1 antibodies. Tests with some clinical benefit. Tests for ovarian reserve. Day 3 serum FSH, E2 and AMH, because decreased ovarian reserve is associated with poor ovum, high aneuploidy and miscarriage. Antithyroid antibodies, as they are associated with recurrent pregnancy loss even in presence of normal thyroid hormone profile. Tests with doubtful or almost no clinical benefit. Thrombophilia testing, factor V Leiden, prothrombin gene mutation, protein C and S deficiency, antithrombin 3 deficiency, homocysteine level and methylene tetrahydrofolate reductase mutation. They have got limited value unless patients have a personal or family history of thrombosis. Endometrial biopsy for chronic endometritis, plasma cell, NK cell, etc. Cervical culture for mycoplasma, ureaplasma, chlamydia. Serological test for PCO including LH and androgen level. peripheral evidence of Th1, Th2 cytokine dysregulation and peripheral blood NK cell level. Post-conceptional evaluation. Close monitoring is needed mostly for emotional support as well as early confirmation of intrauterine gestation and its viability. Serial serum beta-HCG may be helpful until 1200 to 1500 milli international unit per milliliter before USG detection. Whenever the criteria of failed pregnancy is met, pregnancy termination may be expedited to obtain the tissue for karyotype because result may suggest parental karyotyping. Documentation of aneuploidy has important prognostic implication and direct future interventions. Traditional karyotype may fail in 20 to 40% cases due to poor growth of cell and maternal cell contamination, which can be avoided by costly comparative genomic hybridization. In continuing pregnancy, all the newer investigations may be added as per requirement. NT scan, biochemical markers, cell-free DNA, chorionic villus sampling, amniocentesis for fetal karyotype, and in future, fetal karyotype from nucleated fetal RBC in maternal blood. Treatment. As most of the patients with recurrent pregnancy loss will have successful pregnancy next time irrespective of therapy. So, with few exceptions, most therapies are considered experimental. The results of clinical trials in recurrent pregnancy loss patients are almost impossible to compare and evaluate with lack of appropriate control group, rational and statistical analysis. Though recently the knowledge of implantation and placentation has advanced even up to the molecular level, but its favorable modulation and therapy in cases of recurrent pregnancy loss are still lagging. Nearly 60% abortus show chromosomal abnormality even after history of 3 to 4 miscarriages. Mostly they are autosomal trisomy and usually the result of maternal non-disjunction during meiosis. Advanced maternal age is a risk factor. The management of recurrent pregnancy loss with prior identified miscarriage caused by trisomy allows spontaneous conception without any specific medical treatment, as these anomalies are sporadic and unlikely to recur. It is also observed that women with recurrent pregnancy loss who miscarry chromosomal abnormal conceptus are more likely to achieve live birth in subsequent pregnancy than those who miscarry chromosomally normal conceptus. The second option is chromosomal screening of embryos before implantation, pre-genetic screening. And the third option is use of donor gamete. As chromosomal abnormality is an all-time recognized cause of miscarriage, so use of chromosomal screening of embryo before implantation looks like a potential management option of all cases of recurrent pregnancy loss, as we can take single cell biopsy from day 3 embryo or several cells from day 5 to 6 blastocyst for pre-genetic screening to exclude abnormalities in chromosome number and morphology, as well as some inborn error of metabolism by PGD before implantation and transfer only chromosomally normal conceptus. However, problem is the patient has to undergo IVF with all its cost and hazard. Peculiarly, most recurrent pregnancy loss cases conceive quickly and spontaneously. Those with previous aneuploid conceptus have favorable live birth outcome and so do not need PGS. Again, those with previous chromosomally normal conceptus have poor prognosis and would not benefit from PGS. Ultimately, a subset of recurrent pregnancy loss with parental balanced translocations might benefit from this intervention. An additional alternative for patients with parental balanced translocation is the use of donor egg or sperm. Decreased ovarian reserve also may need donor egg or embryo. Anatomic abnormality. Hysteroscopy appears to be the best mode of surgery for most of the etiological factors of uterine cavity in a case of recurrent pregnancy loss. Hysteroscopic resection of uterine septum, hysteroscopic myomectomy for submucous fibroids, and hysteroscopic adhesionolysis for Asherman syndrome. For patients with second trimester loss, secondary to cervical insufficiency, cervical sarclage is indicated, and it is usually done in early second trimester. Cervical insufficiency is described in detail in 2 separate videos earlier. Endocrine abnormalities. Empiric ovulation induction for treatment of unexplained recurrent pregnancy loss. It is a very common and old procedure. The logic behind is that ovulation induction is associated with improved folliculogenesis and healthier oocyte, which improves fertilization, implantation, and reduced chance of luteal phase deficiency. In addition, luteal phase support with progesterone might be helpful. This combined ovulation induction and luteal support might be helpful for PCO patients with androgen and LH hypersecretion, and especially following pituitary desensitization. However, this form of treatment for cases of RPL are not substantiated. For overtly diabetic, pre-pregnancy glycemic control is important. In polycystic ovary patients with hyperandrogenism, hyperinsulinemia, and insulin resistance with recurrent pregnancy loss, treatment with insulin sensitizing agent like metformin looks attractive. Thyroid hormone replacement is needed for hypothyroid patients, and thyroid hormone therapy may be helpful in euthyroid patients with antithyroid antibodies and all patients with TSH between 2.5 to 5 milli-international unit per liter when associated with recurrent pregnancy loss. Hyperprolactinemia is to be managed with dopamine agonist. Infections. Empiric antibiotics are often used in couples with recurrent pregnancy loss to treat infection. Chronic endometritis characterized by histological presence of plasma cells in the endometrium may be associated with recurrent pregnancy loss. Sometimes treatment may be productive, however not recommended by expert group. Elaborate testing for infection is also not recommended for RPL. Therapy may be justified for immunocompromised patient or when a specific infection has been documented. Thank you for your patient watching. If you like the video, please subscribe. Namaste.